Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Geeking Out podcast. I am the Athletic Geek, and back again for round number 2, we have Farmer Billy Hills. Billy, thanks for doing this again.
Hey, you're very welcome, sir. It's always a pleasure to come in and talk with anybody who'll have me. And, after our last conversation, there was no way we couldn't do a part two because I enjoyed the first one. We covered a lot, but we didn't cover everything.
No, and we especially didn't cover some very major parts of your career, but kind of picking up where we left off a little bit. We kind of left off with AAPW. Um, it's been well documented on this channel through some of the other folks that have uh, done interviews with me. Kind of ended in a weird kind of limbo. There were, some talent not agreeing with one another. There were some management picking sides with the talent. You were
Yeah.
kind of an outside observer. When did you hear that this was the end of AAPW? That last show that they ran was kind of the end of it?
I got a Facebook message from one of the guys who was, Chris Hackstrom.
Mhm.
I'd actually got a message from him saying that, hey, I am breaking away from Sean in AAPW. He's like, I'm going to be starting my own thing with Adam and a few others. And he's like, I'm not making you choose sides whatsoever. He's like, but I would love to have you come work for me at my new company that we're starting. We're going to call it Pro Wrestling Collision. And he's like, if you want to go and work for Sean as well, he's like, you're more than welcome to. He's like, I'm not going to, hold you hostage here or be upset if you just want to work for just Sean and not work for me. But I am first and foremost a professional
Mhm.
before I'm a wrestler. So I worked both.
Right.
And I made sure whenever I talked with Sean that this was in no way, shape, form, or fashion any disrespect to him, but I am tied down by no contracts. You know, anything along those lines. I'm an independent contractor,
Right.
you know, and the biggest key words is independent and also contract. The just happens to be, for my person.
Right.
So since I had no contract with either one, I worked both when asked. So that's kind of how I heard about, you know, AAPW kind of going away because they didn't do anything really big after that. I mean, I think they did.
I don't think they did anything really.
No, I don't think so. I know we're going to get into one of the companies that was birthed after AAPW and even after Pro Wrestling Collision a few years down the road. AAPW kind of popped up in one of their shows just as kind of like a memoriam kind of deal where they brought a bunch of the old AAPW faces back and et cetera, et cetera. And, that's pretty much been it. I think Sean pretty much has his hands kind of full doing what he does in his normal everyday life.
Right. So tell me about Pro Wrestling Collision. I know, and if any of the people that were behind Pro Wrestling Collision ever hear this, I say this with no disrespect, but I know we as fans were a little taken aback by Pro Wrestling Collision and maybe not being kind of on the inside. At least me and my group of friends, we kind of felt like, hey, no, no, it's not AAPW, and kind of some of the people we knew weren't there. Like, all respect, best wishes, but we're not gonna take time off from work to go here, and we didn't get to catch any Pro Wrestling Collision. Again, I say that with all due respect to everybody there, but with as a talent, what did you think of Pro Wrestling Collision, and did you think that there was something there? Or do you think that kind of its quick exit was indicative of a bigger problem?
Um, I thought Pro Wrestling Collision was pretty much what you see in modern wrestling now. It was just a little bit before its time. Because during that particular time frame, you're, I guess you could say, kind of like there was no independent wrestling boom like there is now,
Right.
and Pro Wrestling Collision was using all of that kind of, at that time, mainstream kind of independent talent that had a bunch of recognition but hadn't done anything on your Ring of Honors or Impact or even WWE because AEW wasn't a thing at the time. But it was all talent that was hitting big name places. So they were bringing in younger, fresher talent, but then picking the young, fresh talent from AAPW as well.
Right.
Myself and a few others. So they didn't want to pretty much use any of the quote unquote old guard, I guess you could say. Be it the older talent, kind of like your Axel Works, et cetera, just right out of the gate. They kind of wanted to really build the company around its future stars and who they thought were going to be future stars in wrestling.
Right.
And that's 100% commendable. But it's kind of like you said, some of those guys, not everybody knew or was really, you know, behind, I guess you could say.
Right.
But the sad part is even with that being said, the very first show that Pro Wrestling Collision ran, they sold out. That was an indication there because I remember it vividly. We were all back in ballroom 2 because they rent at SIU. They have 3 ballrooms that are just separated by dividers.
Right.
We had ballroom 1, which once separated by a divider was the biggest ballroom. So they put the ring and fans and everything else there. Close up the divider, and then we had ballroom 2 to dress out in.
Right.
And it was about 30 minutes or so before the show was supposed to start. And Chris and Adam came, for the most part, bursting into the locker room and was like, hey, we hate to ask you guys, but can some of you guys please give up your chairs? We ran out here. And every single person in the locker room just started sliding chairs down there to Chris and Adam as they ran them out there to people. And even with all of us giving up our chairs in the back, there were still people that had to stand up against the back wall and watch. Does a little bit of that contribute to it was a TV taping? Yes, absolutely. I mean, even from a fan's perspective, who doesn't want to be on TV?
Right.
So there was that, and that played a good part, but they did just an amazing job of promotion at the time and really using social networks and then putting some boots to ground as well because I'm not sure if you know what Chris Hackstrom does now.
I know he works for, I want to say, one of the Chicago Cubs like
Yeah,
minor league
up in South
affiliates.
Bend, yeah, up in South Bend, Indiana.
Ooh, Graceland, Notre Dame.
Right up there, absolutely. So he had a bunch of, connections in media because that's
Right.
that's what he did and taught at SIU for a very long time up until he got this job with the South Bend Cubs up there. So he had all the equipment on his side. He had all of the media as far as even socials then at the time. He had all of that on his side. So he already leaped off on the right foot.
Right.
And that is a very big key component is making sure if you're going to start a company like what his vision was, you have to have all of those ducks in a row. And the very first episode, and is indicative of that. I mean, you can go back and watch them on YouTube anytime because I'm pretty sure that they're still up there.
Right.
And I mean, it's just absolutely visually, it's dark, it's grimy, kind of just a single light over the ring, just kind of like your classic wrestling, you know, visual, but with modern movement whenever it comes to the actual performers. And that's exactly what he wanted for the
Right.
first few tapings up until we could kind of get out, start moving around to other places, et cetera, and to the point where we found ourselves a home. And we eventually did find ourselves a home, and then that's whenever, unfortunately, it just kind of started dying down.
Well, what happened?
Chris
What
got
happened
burnt
there?
out. Yeah, everybody was just kind of getting burnt out. Um, it was pretty much just being ran by Chris and Adam. And Adam, at the time, he unfortunately had just a horrible, like, real life accident where his house burnt down.
Hmm.
And I remember going and personally helping him go through and salvage anything he possibly could. And on top of that, he was also just looking to get out of Southern Illinois as well.
Right.
And he eventually did. He's married now, has, a little son and everything, all the way out in Arizona. So that was already in the eyes of Chris. He's like, okay, I'm wore out. Adams wore out because they're wore out from AAPW already. And then they immediately just jump right into Pro Wrestling Collision. So we're talking a, roughly 2 year span right there of just absolute chaos for AAPW, then being in a more controlled chaos with Pro Wrestling Collision. It's still going to burn you out. And then you have Adam, who pretty much puts in his resignation that, hey, I'm going to be, leaving Southern Illinois. I'm going to be going, out west. I can't do this anymore. That's a little bit of writing on the walls for Chris. Then this job with South Bend comes up for Chris to get him out of Southern Illinois as well. It was just kind of like, all right, well, just wipe my hands clean of, wrestling right now, and, you know, go go put this degree that I have in media and directing and go put it to work. So he ended up selling the company to another wrestler, to my understanding, and that was it. That was the end of it. We never did anything else after that with the company whatsoever.
Hmm.
It just one day died.
Um. So from kind of the ashes of that, we get Stride Pro Wrestling, and I know you were a big part of Stride.
Yes.
Um. What are your? How did you hear about Stride Pro Wrestling? How did you know? How'd you feel about the company? How did you feel like it fit in kind of the AAPW Pro Wrestling Collision absence?
Sure. So how I first heard about it was from pretty much the guy who owns it, Heath Hatton. Just sitting around one day, and of course, you know how Facebook Messenger works. Little bubble pops up on your phone. I'm like, man, I haven't heard from Tyler in a while. What the heck does he want? And it's this really, really, really long message, and it was about him and another gentleman, who was the other gentleman was a MMA trainer inside the mall in Marion, Illinois, but he was a humongous professional wrestling fan. So he wanted to combine the two into his MMA studio that he had inside of the mall. And then whenever he wanted to do some of his MMA shows, he could of course use the professional wrestling ring that Tyler had. Um, so with that being said, I look over the message and I look over the details about what Tyler's vision and everything for the company was going to be, and how he wanted to use me personally. And I'm just like, that's that's really hard to say no to.
What was it about
Because
the his vision and how he wanted to use you that made you feel that way?
yes, so he still does to this day. He looks at myself and my character as somebody who can not only elevate a company to a certain level just because of my name and my notoriety that I've cut out for myself in this area, that I can also take somebody who is way lower on the proverbial totem pole than me and bring them up to my level so that they can either stay at my level or go above me, however Tyler needs it. So he wanted me to come in, help with the younger talent that he was going to be training inside of the school, and just, of course, bring my name to the company, which, of course, is going to bring fans in, along with his name, bring fans in. And then, of course, also bring some of the AAPW talent over as well. Um, just to kind of, for the most part, in a weird way, kind of apologize for never having gotten that chance at Pro Wrestling Collision. It's kind of be like, you know what, I'm sorry that these guys never did anything with you. You know, come over here because you guys still are loved and have a namesake, in the area. So all of us at AAPW and Pro Wrestling Collision can now use our name to build Stride up and then also help the younger talent come along as well because he wanted to mix all of us older guys who pretty much knew what we were doing and put us in there with the younger talent so that they can learn and then start thriving themselves because they're learning from people who know what they're doing, and you know it just elevates the company and the talent all at the same time, along with it of course being an actual school as well. And I'm like, that's absolutely perfect. I love passing down anything that I learn in my travels from others that I've garnered over the years, because at the time, whenever Stride was first starting, Tyler and I was really the only ones that really had done a whole lot of traveling and really had any sort of, I guess you could say, major outside knowledge of a grand scheme of professional wrestling outside of Southern Illinois, and the
Right,
most recent landscape of independent wrestling that we could kind of pass down to the kids that would end up training in the school and then bring them, up and everything. And I was all for that. I'm all for helping anybody that wants to learn and legitimately wants to learn this and not just try and think that they can use it for a quick cash grab. So
right,
I was 100% behind it, and I love Tyler to death. So there's nothing that I wouldn't do for him, because whenever I first came into AAPW, he was first coming in too. So we kind of came up in this area for the most part kind of together. So he knew what I could do. I knew what he could do to help make this new vision of a company that him and the other guy who was in the MMA had. We knew what we could do together to just build this up. And then, of course, we had Kevin Huntsberger, who was still on TV and everything at the time as well. We had him on board. So that immediately, of course, is going to bring some eyes to the product as well because of him just being a personality on TV.
right.
So it was quite literally, it was just a really good, perfect storm on how Stride just came together. Like, we had a venue, We had somebody who not only, it wasn't even financial whatsoever, but just emotionally just kind of backed us and supported us, because not all venues are like, really supportive of having wrestling in their place.
Right.
So the fact that we had somebody who actually supported us and that was, a huge win as well. So it was quite literally just a perfect storm of just how Stride started. It gave some of the guys who got burnt by, the split with AAPW and Pro Wrestling Collision, some of those guys who got burnt by that, it gave them somewhere to come back to and work again and get back in front of those eyes who quite literally, I mean, they missed them
Right.
because they hadn't seen them in the year or two that Pro Wrestling Collision was around.
So what? I mean, you had a long career in Stride, but what was some of the things in Stride that really, like, as far as talent you worked with, storylines, matches? What are some of your favorite Stride memories?
Oh goodness. Oh, there's quite a few. One of my let me see if I don't think I can get away with that story. That's not really one that kind of happened out front. But here's one of the first one that kind of comes to mind. There was um a guy who was going through training and everything at the time. His he was kind of given kind of like a pretty boy type gimmick because he has beautiful hair to him, but he's about the size of a toothpick for the most part. But he just has the beautiful long hair. He kind of has the good facial features and everything, but he's about the size of a toothpick. So Tyler's like, with that kind of look and everything, you're going to be a bad guy, et cetera, and off you went. He had, roughly about 2, 3, 4 months of matches and everything under his belt, and then Tyler's like, "Hey, would you mind, working a match with Elijah?" I said, "Of course. I'm always down to, work anybody. Like, doesn't bother me one bit. Let's do it." He's like, "Okay." He's like, "But here's the thing." He's like, "I don't want Elijah to get any offense in on you whatsoever." I'm like, "Excuse me? What do you want to do again?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I am going to have Axel work. He's going to come in at the end of this, and he's going to ball up his chain on his fist. He's going to pop you. You're going to go out, and then he's going to drag Elijah's lifeless corpse on top of you so Elijah wins." I'm like, "Cool. Sounds like good business to me." I'm just like, how do you want us to get there? He's like, "I don't care how you get there." He's like, "Just go out there and have fun." So I pulled a kind of old rabbit out of my hat because I love to get fans involved in my matches as much as humanly possible. Because you guys pay your money that you work very hard for to be taken out of life for a couple of hours.
Right.
It's your getaway. So I want to get you involved. So as we're about to go out there, I told Elijah, I'm like, "Listen, bud, do me a favor. Just listen to me, and you will be just fine." I'm like, "We're not going to do anything crazy. We're not going to do anything stupid. Just listen, and you will know what's coming." So what I did was, as soon as we locked up, got over on him, just immediately because it's just the sheer size. Of course, somebody my size can overpower him, right?
Right.
So that's exactly what I did. And I proceeded to pretty much go around all four corners of the ring and ask the fans, "Hey, what do you want me to do to him?" And the loudest response I could hear is what I would do. And we just did that for like 5, 6 minutes of just BSing around. And there was a video that I kind of seen come up in my Facebook memories about a month ago of this particular match. And there was this one kid who yelled at the top of his lungs to do an RKO. I my gimmick has no reason whatsoever to do one of those, but I wanted to teach Elijah how to listen and control a crowd. That was
Right.
my goal on something to teach him. So I said, all right, well, this is what we're going to do then, I guess. And boom, hit him with the RKO. I pin Elijah. I'm like, kick out at 1.5. One, and boom, he kicks out big time. And fans are like, ooh. And I'm like, you can hear it in the video because I go, oh man, I hope Randy don't see that. He's going to be so pissed. And then, sure enough, after that, I pick Elijah up. Axe hits the ring, spins me around, pops me with the chain, and we're Dunskies there. And that was one of my very first kind of big memories, was just being able to go out there and just teach Elijah how to work with a crowd and then control things from there to build up to the next big thing. And he's like, that is probably because I just seen him not too long ago at a Stride show. And he's like, that's probably been one of the best lessons I've learned so far, was how to start out and just start pacing everything and then get to your peak, then down to a valley, back to your peak, and then finally just, get to the end of things. I'm like, well, if I never do anything else ever in this business again, I'm happy I was actually able to do that. I was able to pass that one down. I'm good to go. And then the next one would have to be the very final match I had at Stride. That was the one where AAPW and Stride got together to put on a show. And I believe it was for charity. I
It's for
believe.
Curly.
Yeah, it was for Curly. That's exactly right. Yeah, it was that one. It was the show for Curly. That one will always hold a special place for me, just for just how special it was for Curly, and just to be able to have all of those old AAPW faces be able to come back and just be in the locker room with a lot of those guys that I haven't been in the locker room with for years. To just be back in the locker room with those guys, that one is most definitely one that holds a special place in my heart because that was the very last match I've ever had.
We'll circle back to that, but do you feel that that show
Yeah,
really brought closure onto AAPW? Do you feel like that was a cathartic show, that show?
I I do. I feel like if that's going to be the last thing that name AAPW does, I think so. That was a good spot to leave the memories alone.
Right. Um, so we're gonna go from talk about one company that came after APW to another one, and that is Cape Championship Wrestling.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved with Cape Championship Wrestling? Kind of give me the backstory on this promotion from your side of things.
Of course. Yeah, that is most definitely not a problem because it's another one of those companies where I was there from quite literally day one, just like Stride. Um, I'm looking through social media one day and I see that there is a Comic Con about 20 minutes away from my house over in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And I'm like, ooh, that's fun. And then I see that they're going to have professional wrestling over there. And I'm like, whoa, Missouri is very hard to run in as far as professional wrestling goes. So I'm like, the fact that they have that, I'm like, I'm 30 minutes away from there. I've got to get on this show. And sure enough, luckily for me, I knew who was running the show. It was a gentleman named Herb Simmons. He runs out of St. Louis with SICW, Southern. If I remember right, I think it's Southern Illinois Championship Wrestling, something along those lines.
Yes.
Um, and I immediately messaged her. I'm like, sir, I live 30 minutes away from the show that you're having in Cape Girardeau. I would love to be on it if you can find any way to have me whatsoever. Please, I don't mind working for free. I don't care. I would just please love the opportunity to be on it because I worked for him in the past. And within 5-10 minutes, he responded back and he's like, I would love to have you there. He's like, I think that would be great. He's like, find you an opponent and you're on the show. So at the time, a buddy of mine still lived over in Cape Girardeau. So I messaged him. I'm like, hey, I got us booked on this, wrestling show at the Comic Con that is coming up in about a month or two. And I was given, carte blanche to get anybody I want to work. You're 10 minutes from the venue. Do you want to work it with me? He's like, well, duh. Of course I do. So I got a hold of Herb. I gave him all of my buddy's information, which is my buddy is Osby Tomlin.
Okay. I'm just getting
He
ready to ask who it was.
Yeah, he's a guy who honestly was around for me whenever I first broke into this business. Period. He and I always hate giving him credit for this, dadgummit, but he's the one who actually gave me my name.
Really?
Yep, yep. I cannot take credit for that myself whatsoever. Um, and I can tell that story real quick. It was way back in 2005 whenever I first started doing this. It was myself, my trainer, my training partner, and Osby. We were sitting in my living room watching a pay-per-view, and we were trying to start going over characters and who we wanted to be in wrestling and everything else. And Osby just kind of popped out there. He's like, you know what would be a fun name for somebody? You know, the name Hillbilly, but instead of it being Hillbilly, it'd be Billy Hills. Here we are.
What? I'm actually like, now that you've actually said that, I'm just like, I never put two and two together. I'm just like, oh, Billy Hills. Okay, whatever.
Hey,
Like, I never really like put a correlation together. So I mean, I don't. I mean, depending on how you interpret that, either that's good, that I'm just kind of like, okay, hey, that's subtle, that's smart, or that's bad. And the fact that it's like you couldn't pick up on that, like it's right in your face.
here's the thing. Don't worry, because here's the thing. You're not the only one. You're not alone. You're
Okay.
not alone. For anybody who has ever asked how, I came up with this and everything else, and I've told that story, same reaction. So yeah, so don't worry. You're not alone there whatsoever.
Okay.
So I got all of Osby's information. I got it up there to Herb. Herb already had all of my stuff. So he puts us on the new flyer. Says he got talent from Cape Girardeau that's going to be there. The whole spiel that local talent's going to be on this show now because it was already stacked with Terry Funk coming in.
Okay.
So show day comes and me and Osby get there. We're just chatting each other up, chatting with everybody else in the locker room. We go find her. We're like, all right, sir, what do you need from us? She's like, well, of course, Billy, you're gonna be face. Osby, you'll be heel. Except, I want Osby to go over. I'm like, cool, let's do this. So he's like, have you guys talked to the ring announcer yet to get all your stuff in? I said, no, we'll go do that now. So we go find the ring announcer, and I give him all of my stuff, name, height, weight, where I'm from. And he asked Osby, he's like, all right, where are you from? And Osby goes, well, technically I'm from here, but introduce me from here instead, because this is what I go by for my gimmick. So that happens, and a couple matches go by, and then it's time for me and Osby to come up. And things go on a small roller coaster from here. Eli. Um, in the best possible way ever. Osby's music hits, and you can see it in the video because there's beautiful video of this. It's kind of a quick highlight thing. And the ring announcer, of course, because Osby goes out first because he's the bad guy, right?
Right.
Ring announcer announces him from Cape Girardeau, Missouri.
Ooh.
Huge ovation for the bad guy, right? So, my gimmick at the time, was pretty much just like it had been over at Stride and at APW. I drape myself in the American flag. I'm Americana. I'm one of the people, blue collar, the whole 9 yards, right?
Right.
My music hits. I hit the stage, draped in the flag. For the most part, I get booed out of the building.
Ooh.
Uh-huh. So, first couple minutes of the match were going just as we had talked about it. Okay? First couple minutes on how that's going. Literally, there is a spot in the video. It's at about 3 minutes into it. I shared this not too long ago, too. Where you literally see, after I hit something big on Osby, you literally see it in my face where something just flipped in my head. Because I'm sitting in the ring after I hit this big move, and I look up, and I'm looking straight ahead. And straight ahead of me is my fiance at the time, Sarah, and one of my best friends, Jason Wells. And you'll be hearing that name a lot here soon.
Okay.
And all I see is both of them just give me pretty much 4 thumbs up. And you see this huge, just Joker-esque grin come across my face. I nod up and down. I jerk Osby up by the hair of his head, and I look at him and I said, "I'm sorry, but we're going off script," and I punch him right in the mouth. And everything that we had talked about that I was to do to him, he was to do to me, we flipped every single bit of it. And we still eventually got to the same exact outcome of Osby supposed to be going over, but we had that awkward Hogan Rock moment where everything flipped,
Right.
but still gave the fans the outcome that they wanted. I had tunnel vision after, my little brain kind of flip thing that happened. I had tunnel vision and really just kind of wanted to focus on what I was doing in the ring at the time. So I had no idea that Terry Funk had watched the whole thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, I had no idea. So Osby hits the curtain. Terry already has him snatched up by the arm. And I hit the curtain and I see Terry holding on to Osby, and then he grabs me by the coveralls. I'm like, oh God, what did I do? I'm like, oh God, Terry's gonna rip me
Right.
one. Oh God, I screwed up so bad. But he goes, boys, I want to tell you something. Out of the 3 matches before you guys, y'all have been the only ones to go out there, listen to those fans, and give them exactly what they wanted. Good damn job, boys. Good job. And I'm just like, Terry Funk said I did good. I'm almost in like tears because here I am thinking that I'm going to get yelled at by Terry, but he's like, no, you guys did a great damn job and have been the only match of the night so far. I'm like, yay, I did good. He's like, because you guys listened to the fans, you seen it wasn't working, You overcome, you improvised, and gave them exactly what they wanted at the end of it. You did a good job. And my heart was just soaring for the rest of that night. Couldn't nobody tell me shit for the rest of the month. Could nobody tell me nothing. I was just sky high. So after that show ends, about 3 weeks or so later, I get another one of them random Facebook bubbles pop up on my phone. And it's from Jason. And he goes, "Hey, brother, I know we didn't get a chance to talk by the end of the show down there in Cape, but he's like, I want to tell you that you did an absolute great job out there with you and Osby. He's like, I loved you flipping from babyface to heel right there in the heat of the moment. He's like, your crowd work and everything was absolutely phenomenal. He's like, you guys did so good. He's like, but here is why I'm messaging you. He said the guy who ran Comic Con said he had so much fun and he's had such an overwhelming response to have wrestling back at the Comic Con every single year that he's thought, why only have it once a year? Why don't we do it once a month? So he said Ken Murphy is the guy who runs the Comic Con over in Cape.
Right.
He said Ken, of course, already has the license. He's like, we will have the same venue every single month, once a month. He's like, I already have somebody with a ring. I'm now just building up the roster. And he's like, I want you on it. I'm like, well, I get to one, help build a company from quite literally the ground up. I already have a license. I had an absolute blast last time I worked over in Cape. And I get to do something I've never done before, and that's be a bad guy. Because I've never been a bad guy up until that literal match right then and there with Osby. So it was a no brainer. I immediately said, "Yep, I'm in." I'm like, the only thing you have to do is just give me dates, and I'm like, I will be there for you every single one, every single date. He's like, thank you so much. He's like, we're getting the social networks and everything created now. He's like, we will, you know, tag you in the announcement that you're one of our first signees to the new company, and we'll get out the dates and everything to you as soon as we have them all. And it's just been a roller coaster ever since. Because that very first show that we had outside of the Comic Con itself was just absolute magic because for the people that was not able to come to the Comic Con wrestling event because there was apparently a lot who was not able to make it were able to come to the first actual CCW show. And those people really took it up another notch because you want to talk about crowd interacting, they interacted back. So much to the fact that the very first show out of the gate, I almost got the company shut down.
Okay, you gotta tell me about that.
Oh, absolutely. So, there was a gentleman named Hunter Hendricks. He used to work for the local radio station and everything over there. So he was playing a really big part on getting the name CCW out there in, kind of like the airwaves, et cetera, outside of just our social networking presence and, shares and things along those lines. He was kind of a foot on the ground kind of deal and getting the CCW name out there. And of course, using his name as being, the big radio presence in that area as well brought so many eyes to the product as well. It was just another one. It was kind of like with Stride. It was a good perfect storm. Kind of like with Kevin, we had the same thing with Hunter over there. So Hunter became the ring announcer for the very first show. The I want to yes, it was the second match that I had of the night because the very first show was a tournament for the heavyweight title. I had 3 matches. Um, the second matchup was against a guy named Jason Vaughn, and as as we're circling up the match before it starts, how wrestlers do that.
Right.
Everybody is just talking trash to me, and of course I'm giving it right back to them. I forget exactly what it was that was said to me. I still can't remember it to this day, but I remember what I said back to him. And it was, you know what? That may be, but I wouldn't fuck your ugly ass with his dick.
Oh dear.
And I'm sorry for the language, but that's
No, no,
exactly
no.
what
You can say whatever you want. It's just knowing what
he
I know about CCW, it's like,
said.
um,
So, with that being said, you know how wrestlers circle, right? I'm in the
yeah.
middle of circling whenever I do that. So my pointing is kind of, a bit at an awkward angle, I guess you could say, since fans are lower than us as far as the ring goes too. And of course I'm moving. So as I'm pointing at the people that I thought said that, apparently they wasn't the ones who said it. So the fans kind of parted the Red Sea and started looking at this woman, for the most part in the back row, literally sitting by herself. She had an absolute panic attack and a full blown breakdown because all five, no, no, that was about right. It was about 500 people there at that show. All eyes pretty much went right to her. And she just had a panic attack and just melted down. So she gets up and she runs. And I see her go through the curtain where we are, where our locker room is. And I'm like, well, I got to wrestle this match, but what the hell is she doing going back there? So I wrestle the match and everything, and Jason meets me at the curtain. He's like, you fucked up. I'm like, what do you mean I fucked up? What'd I do? He's like, you remember what you said to those fans out there about you wouldn't fuck her with his dick? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, I'm sure you got the right people, but something else happened. And that's whenever he told me about all those people just started directing their vision and their, gaze pretty much at that woman. Well, sure enough, that woman was Hunter's wife.
Uh oh.
Exactly. So, needless to say, by that happening, which wasn't even, really directed at her, it just inadvertently happened in her general direction. Hunter was ready to leave. He was ready to be done already. But, I went over there, I apologized, and I told him, like, hun, listen, I don't know how they even thought that this was at you because you were sitting in the very back row by yourself, nobody even around you, because, that's where Hunter wanted you to be, away from everybody. I'm like, I was quite literally talking to these 2 fat slobs in the front row, that I think said what they did to me. And I was just coming back at them. I'm like, this had nothing to do with you. She's like, trust me, I know, I understand, but when everybody started looking at me, I had a panic attack and I lost my mind. I'm like, it's okay. I understand. Just can you go tell Hunter to cool his jets too before we kind of lose all of our shit here? And Hunter came over. She told him, had apologized and everything else. And he's like, here's the thing, Billy. He's like, it's not even so much that it happened. He's like, here's where I made a mistake. He's like, I told her that if she sits back here in this back row by herself, that none of the wrestlers are going to mess with her. I'm like, oh, that's what you told her, huh? He's like, yeah. He's like, I kind of messed up on that part. He's like, even though everything you said had absolutely nothing to do with her, it was the fact that all eyes went to her after, what was said, and just in that general direction.
Right.
So he's like, it's fine, if, apologies and she's okay, then yeah, I'm okay too. We can just continue as business as usual. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I mean, we're here talking and, making jokes and cracking jokes and everything now. So I'm pretty sure she's okay. I'm like, are you okay? She's like, yeah, I am. I'm okay. I'm going to go sit back down now. That's how I almost got the very first show shut down.
Jeez.
Yeah, but it was smooth sailing and everything after that. And I mean, it's had its ups and downs in, its 5 years and everything, but for the most part, besides just some, you know, backstage politics and things on those lines, man, it's just been, smooth sailing over there. I got to be in the main event of the very first show ever for the heavyweight title. I got to help build up that division. Then whenever I was done helping build up that division, myself and my tag team partner Dell Tucker, we created and made the tag team division what it is over there right now today by ourselves. Um, because there wasn't really any tag teams or anything to really be made or had over there at the time. It was just kind of all just singles matches, and it was kind of like old SmackDown where match one and match two would become a tag match later on. But Dell and I, whenever it was proposed to put he and I together as a team and try and build up a tag team division because they were going to get some tag team titles, I immediately jumped at the opportunity because it was another one of those cases where I got to be the foundation for it. That's one thing that I pride myself on being is a foundation member of something. Like I was a founding member for Stride, even for the most part, kind of like a founding member for Pro Wrestling Collision, and also for CCW itself as well, and their heavyweight title division and tag team division too. I helped build both of them. That's something that I take great pride in because that means that the people who book those shows see a lot in you and know your worth and what you can bring to the table. And that just brings me just so much joy and just so much happiness, even with getting the very first show almost shut down. Even getting jumped by an entire biker gang was worth it. Um,
Do what now?
yeah, yeah. That happened. I think maybe our sixth or seventh show. I almost got jumped by a biker gang. You want that story? I'll be
Yes,
happy to tell
definitely.
it. All right, cool. Because I love this story. This story's fun. Um, we were in Chaffee, Missouri, which is roughly about 30-ish minutes from Cape Girardeau. It was a Halloween show. We couldn't run in our normal building because whenever it comes time for Halloween, they run a gigantic haunted house out of our normal venue. So we had to go have our Halloween show elsewhere. Um, I did not know this, so I ended up getting to the show very late. By the time I got there, there was already just a excuse me, a giant line of people to get in. I had never been to this place, so I had no idea where to park for the show. I ended up parking with the fans instead of parking where the wrestlers park to get into the locker room. So, me not knowing that, I call up Jason and I'm like, "Hey, where do I come in for the locker room?" Because I didn't see a door on the side of the building for us to come through, like he said. He's like, "What side of the building are you on?" I'm like, "I'm on this side." He's like, "Oh." He's like, "Yeah, you're definitely on the wrong side of the building, brother." I'm like, "Okay, can I come around the back and get in?" He's like, nah, can't come that way." I'm like, "So how am I to get in?" He's like, "I don't know." He's like, "I don't know." He's like, "You might have to figure that one out." So I'm like, "All right, let me get out of the car, let me get my bag, and I'll figure this out." Hang up the phone. I get my bag out, put it on the ground, and I start just kind of, slowly making my way towards human beings that are trying to get into the show, that are paying to get in. And I just start thinking to myself, okay, I am one of the most hated, despised pieces of crap over here. I'm now walking at all of these people who are now looking at me. What the hell am I going to do? I'm like, well, the door's open right there where they're going in. Instead of just being nice and cordial to tell them, hey, let me get through so I can get to the locker room, why don't I just go through them? So I start walking a little bit faster. And I get up to the people, and I actually get up to the door where they're taking tickets. Everything, and even the ticket taker, everything stops, and everybody starts looking at me. And as everybody starts looking at me, I yell at the top of my lungs, "Get your ass out of my way." And it's kind of like that very first show where the Red Sea parts and they let me come through. The locker room is right by this door. It's on the other side of it. So people heard me yelling, not only in the locker room, but the fans that had already made their way in as well heard me. So as I walk through, people that have already, got their seats and are sitting down see me and they just start booing and yelling at me. So I just stop and I just kind of, get my wherewithal where everything is and I just start yelling back. And finally, I feel this tug on the back of my clothes, and I turn around thinking like it's a fan messing with me or something. I get ready to, just give them one, but I turn around and it's our group. We're called the Pinnacle. It's our manager, Jeff. And he's like, "Hey, Jason sent me out here to get your crazy ass. Get the hell back here in the locker room." So I'm just like, "All right, hold on, let me get my bag," and then you drag me to the bag. So I grab my bag, and he's just kind of like pulling me and just dragging me to the back while I'm steadily just trying to get away from him and yelling at fans and everything else. So finally we get to the back, and we all have a good laugh about it. He's like, "Yeah, your dumbass, that's going to have to be a thing from now on. You know that, right? Where you come through the front door." I'm like, I'm actually kind of for that. And I get with the guy who I'm having my match with and everything later. We go over all of our stuff, and it gets time for our match. He goes out first because he has a whole lot of weapons and everything he wants to use, and I go out second. Uh, I have a mask on and everything because it's a Halloween show, you know. So I have kind of this Jason mask on that I had done up. And as I'm making my way out there, I don't think anybody can hear me yell through it, so I'm not really yelling, or I'm letting Jeff do some of the work. But I feel just this heavy, heavy substance hit me in the side of the head. I had no idea what it was up until I looked down and I see candy start hitting the floor. I take my hat off, I take my mask off, I turn to my right, and I yelled out, "Who the hell threw it?" It was another one of those situations, Red Sea parted, and I see this little bitty old lady standing on a chair, yelling, "I threw it, you fat son of a bitch! What are you gonna do about it?" And her husband, who is sitting right there next to her, leans a little bit to the right away from her, pretty much wanting nothing to do with her whatsoever. But she's dressed in like this biker garb. So I'm like, all right, Halloween show, no big deal. She's just being an old lady hooker kind of deal. So I'm like, all right, you little old bitch, you want to throw shit? Let's go out in the parking lot right now and I will beat your old ass. She's like, oh yeah? You want to go out in the parking lot and fight? I'm like, hell yeah, you old bitty, let's go. So she starts going to the door and I'm like, well, I can't not fight her now. So I start going to the door too. By the time I could get about 5 steps towards that door, because I already had it in my head that once I got to the door, if she was already outside, I was just going to slam the door, behind her and then just make my way back to the ring. But I got about 5 steps towards the door, and Jeff wasn't trying to hold me back, and there was really no security either. But out of my peripheral vision, I see 50 bikers start coming at me.
Oh
And
shit.
I'm like, uh-huh, yeah. And that was kind of like my thought. I'm like, oh, I'm about to have to fight some bikers. This is going to be fun. But I keep going towards the door. Because I'm like, if I can get to the door, means I can probably get away from these 50 assholes that are probably about to jump me and beat my ass. I can at least maybe get away from them. But Jeff had weaseled his way around me and had pulled out the knife I gave him just in case anything went down. And then another, who's a great friend of mine, he goes by Big Lee Montgomery, had gotten up there with Jeff as well to just kind of block them bikers off. Jeff told me, hey, just get over there to Vaughn, get in the ring, and we'll handle this. And I'm like, fuck that. I'm not just going to leave you and Lee here. So, we pretty much fight off the freaking biker gang who was pretty much there to just kill me. We kind of fight them off and just push them back into their corner of the room again. And we finally had, a really, really, really fast match after that one because we didn't want to leave me out there too long. So we rushed through everything. And, as I'm making my way back to the back again, here they come again. And all I feel is just this heavy shove through the curtain. And then I hear Big Lee just yelling at him, hey, stop your shit or else I'm going to kick you out this time. Because they were all at the curtain trying to get in and get back there to get at me because apparently this is like one of their leader, like their chapter, like their leader or whatever, like his wife. So like I really stepped on some toes here apparently.
Oh jeez.
So yeah, that was like show 6 or 7. Man, I was just whew, I was raising hell and taking names over there. And the part where I had to go through the front door, I literally started making that a thing. Every single show that we ever had since then, up until the time where I had to step away, every single show we ever had, I would come through the front door, no matter if I was a bad guy or a good guy. come through that front door, just giving every single fan every little ounce of energy that I had to make sure that, you know, they got an experience that they can tell their friends and family about, and their kids too, that they got this experience out of what they, went and did. They got a story out of it. If they didn't get anything out of the matches or anything else, they at least got this fat hillbilly coming through the front door raising hell as soon as he got there, kind of deal. And it got me a lot of heat with the fans. The locker room absolutely loved it. So many of them just wanted to do it with me, just to kind of, see what that felt like, because it was just an absolute blast to just hit the top of, the stairs in the arena building, because you were at our last show, so you know what the arena building looks like,
Right.
and the stairs that you have to walk down to get to the ring area. I would come through the front door with the fans, even if they were in line. I would come through the front door with them, with my bag, sometimes with an entourage, sometimes by myself. But I'm coming right through them. And they finally learned that once I got close, get out of my way or I'm a bum rush through you. And then once I got to the top of the stairs, out where you could see the ring and everything else, I would make my presence known. People would just start booing me out the door, and people just wanted to be a part of it. It became a show in of the show all in of itself. And I will never forget one of the special guests that we had. Actually, I say two. Two actually got to experience this personally themselves. One of them was EC3,
Oh,
because I got to wrestle him over in Cape Girardeau. So
what was wrestling EC3 like? What was he like?
a- absolutely phenomenal. He utmost professional. Matt is absolutely amazing. He is an amazing guy. So much fun, so giving in the ring, wanting to make sure you got over, you shined, you looked good, because he knew he probably wasn't going to be coming back. So he wanted to do anything in his power to help me get over. That is what he said to others before I got there. He didn't know what I would do whenever I got to shows there at the arena. He didn't know that I come through the front door and was just raising absolute hell. He had no idea. So I do that, and he was in the ring doing a meet and greet whenever I got there. He pulls one of the head of talent, pulls them in, who was kind of, keeping the line going and keeping fans moving, pulls him in, is like, hey, who the hell is this guy? What the hell is going on? And the guy told him, he's like, oh, that's Billy. That's the guy you're working. He's like, really? He's like, yeah, that's the guy that you're working later on. And he goes, holy shit. He's like, that's my new favorite guy on the independents right now. He's like, because he just made our entire night so much easier. And just to kind of really just kind of nail that nail in that coffin, whenever I got about 3/4 of the way to the locker room, because our locker room, what you seen, used to not be up on that stage. You remember where concessions are?
Yeah, they're kind of in the back of the building. Yeah.
Yeah. Our locker room used to be attached to that. So that's where our locker room used to be. So I would hit the top of the stairs, go all the way around over to the other side of the concession area, just giving people hell. So that's what I was doing. And I got about halfway, maybe 3/4 the way around, and I see out of my peripheral vision that he has stood up and is just watching me. So I'm like, I can't ignore this. So I just stop and I just do an about face right there, and I just start staring at him. And I'm like, oh, look, it's this asshole whose Impact title I get to take later. And I just start barrel assing towards him. And I see this giant shit-eating grin come across his face. So I get to the rail, I jump up over it, and somehow, I don't know who's seen it, But like a bunch of the talent starts running out of the curtain down the aisle. Meet me halfway, meet EC3 halfway, just to kind of keep us apart. Won't let me get in the ring. And going back to Osby again, that jackass, gosh damn it, he was the GM at the time. He met me at the stairs as I'm at the top of the stairs trying to get into the ring. He grabs me by the shorts, pulls my shorts down to where my butt is hanging out the entire time. And you can literally see it in the Facebook videos where people like recorded this, and you just see my butt crack just hanging out the whole time. And Osby has his head turned to the left, and you can visibly see him just laughing his butt off. He is losing his mind laughing, and I'm sitting there with my flip flop in my hand, just trying to whack EC3 with it, any chance I got. And he finally gets to the back, and he's like, dude, that was so much fun and just some improvised greatness that I've not had since I got released and I've been on independent shows, because this was maybe like his 10th independent show since he had gotten released. And he's like, that was absolutely amazing. He's like, thank you so much, because he's like, I always had to put in so much work at these shows. Like, you just made our night so much easier. And I'm like, well, you're welcome. I'm like, it's what I do. I'm here to help. But then Colt Cabana. Oh, I scared him. I scared him. It was our very first super show that we call them, and that's where we bring in any major name that we can get our hands on. We bring into this show, right? And it's the usual me, man. I hit the top of the stairs coming down, and it was me and my tag team partner, Dale. We're the tag team champions at the time. So I'm coming down, Dale's right behind me, and my bag boy is right behind Dale with my bag and my second bag and Dale's bag. And because I'm carrying my gear with me, but my bag boy has my merch and Dale's gear bag. And as I'm going through, I'm yelling at people. You seen how they had merch up against the wall whenever you got down?
Yeah, yeah.
They had some vendors there. There was a vendor there. And as I'm going through, I'm kind of done yelling at some people, so there's kind of like a little bit of a quiet, I guess you could say. And from my left, because there's no fans in between me and the vendor, and I hear one of the vendors goes, you fat piece of shit. Woo-hoo! Eli, I stopped in my tracks. And you can watch it in the video because it's out there on Facebook still. I go, what'd you say? He goes, you heard me. And he said it again. I'm like, oh, really? You paid for this spot, right? He's like, yeah, I did. All right, so we already got your money? I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, okay. So all of his stuff that he had on his table, I just flipped it. I flipped all of his stuff in the floor, his drink, his food, his merchandise he had for sale, everything he had on his table, I flipped the entire thing at him and just flipped the table on its head.
Did he not know you were a wrestler? Or what was his deal?
No idea. I don't know if he did or if he didn't. I didn't care at the moment, and even to this day, because I haven't seen that guy back, I don't care. I don't care if he knew or not. I have no idea because the guy and his stuff hasn't been back. But Colt Cabana is like a couple of tables down, and after I do that and I just stare at the guy for a moment, I grab, my gear bag and I'm walking away from him. And the person who caught this video, you just see Colt Cabana on like the far right hand side of it up against the wall with a fan with his mouth on the floor like, what in the hell just happened? And, we make our way around, we get to the locker room, and I would say about 30, 45 minutes later, um, I didn't know that I had parked my stuff next to Colt. I had no idea. So, I'm sitting there, I'm starting to get, dressed, get ready and everything. And I see these, kind of older beat up shoes, as I'm putting my boots and everything on, kind of step into my vision. And I look up and it's Colt. I'm like, hey, man, good to see you again. And I go back to, put my stuff on. He's like, dude, what in the hell happened out there when you flipped that dude's table? I'm like, yeah, that was pretty cool, wasn't it? He's like, no. He's like, you scared the shit out of me. He's like, I had to go change my underwear. He's like, I only got two pair for the whole weekend. I'm like, my bad, man. He's like, I'm sorry, but you call me a fat piece of shit. I couldn't just let it slide. He's like, oh, well, I guess so, but damn. He's like, you kind of come a long way from singing, karaoke with me in this freaking, hot gymnasium over in Illinois to, now flipping tables. He's like, you got to come a long way since then. I'm like, yeah, well, stuff happens. He's like, but I have to admit, he's like, it was kind of funny. He's like, after, I realized, one, who it was, you, and two, what happened. He's like, I did kind of giggle after I cleaned myself up. I'm like, hey, you're welcome. I'm like, we still gonna do karaoke later again? He's like, well, I guess maybe.
So it seemed like you were really embracing the heel side of yourself. What did you have any growing pains going from the Americana babyface that I first saw you as in APW to this you know heel that's flipping over tables and making lewd comments to friends' wives and all that good stuff.
um, to be honest with you, no. I had absolutely no issue whatsoever making that transition over to being babyface to heel because, to be honest with you, Eli, having since 2005 up until, for the most part, 5, 6 years ago, I had pretty much been nothing but a good guy. So with that comes a lot of frustration when, you want to get other facets and other things under your proverbial belt that you can offer to other companies, and you don't have that, can get very frustrating because you want to be able to take who you are as a performer and be able to apply it to both sides of the coin, be it babyface or heel, for a company. But my character and the way that everybody over in Illinois always wanted it to be portrayed was just to be a babyface. So I never would get the opportunity to be anything other anywhere else because any promoters that would book me, the only footage they ever seen of me was whenever I was just this huge Americana babyface for, companies that had a little bit of notoriety up here. So that's all that they would book me as. And for a long time, that was very frustrating because I wanted to have more to offer. I knew I had more to offer on the flip side of the coin, being a bad guy. I knew I had more to offer and I knew I could offer more. I just needed the opportunity to do so. And anytime I would bring that up, it would just immediately be shot down and be like, no, no, we can't do that. We have to have you as a babyface. You're so good. You help build up anybody you work with, along with putting more stock in yourself after the match. You put more stock in whoever you worked. Like, there's no way we can have you be a bad guy. We just can't. We can't do it. So, along with just being told that over and over and over and over again, comes a lot of frustration. Years, years and years of frustration. So, whenever I pretty much got that thumbs up from my fiance Sarah and my buddy Jason at that SICW show, and I just took it upon myself to just flip that switch and listen to what I was being given by the fans and react accordingly. I was just off to the races. Like I felt like there was just absolutely no way that I could ever go back to being a baby again. Which I mean, I did somehow naturally. It was just the weirdest thing ever. Whenever it did happen, but I didn't. I didn't have any issues whatsoever being able to make that transition because I just took every single no that I ever got to being a back and just used all of that as motivation to just do what I could to prove them wrong and prove me right.
Right.
And it it's paid off. I've been able to truly, after finally getting that other side of the coin under my belt and have it so fine tuned, that was whenever I started getting, finally really outside of this Southern Illinois, and Missouri, bubble, and really blew up out of it because people would just be talking about my shenanigans and sharing the videos and everything else online that I would be doing over in Cape. And of course, other promoters and bookers would see that and be like, holy crap, this dude is playing a Southern hillbilly gimmick that should be a babyface, but he's actually killing it as a bad guy? Really? So they wanted that for themselves. So I've been privileged enough for this to just work out in my favor and just never have any issues whatsoever being able to, make that transition from babyface to heel. And I was even able to pull it off to where I was a heel, the biggest heel in the company over in Cape, to 30 minutes across the pond being the biggest babyface that Stride had.
What?
Like
Oh, go ahead.
it was just magic, like how because the fans went to both,
Right.
being so close to one another. So people would know what I would do over in Cape. I was a completely different person at Stride. People would know what I did at Stride. Well, then go to Cape and see a totally different person. And I was just able to just make it work. It was just absolute magic, and to the point to where it got so big that over in Cape, the fans just naturally just flipped me babyface.
What
Like they just started loving everything that I was doing, and they just stopped booing me.
what made you decide that the AAPW tribute show would be your final match? And is there a chance we'll see Farmer Billy Hills come back?
Well, you are about to get a story that nobody has ever heard me tell publicly.
Okay.
Because I have kept this under wraps since it happened. In late, mid to late 2019, um, I was diagnosed with colon cancer.
Oh.
So
Oh.
that immediately put a halt on anything that I had going or was doing wrestling wise. Because at the time that this happened, I had just become a champion over in Cape, and I just became the champion of any company that ran in Missouri. That's how much stock I had at the time. I ran Missouri with that title that they put upon me. And then that happened. So everything came to a very abrupt halt for me. And I, told Jason what was going on, and I told Tyler, Heath, what was going on. And they're like, okay, how do you want to do this? I'm like, well, I'm like, if I got one more and it's gonna be the only one, it's gonna be the last one. I'm like, I I did the job over in Cape. I'm like, I gotta do my last one for you, Heath. He's like, well, he's like, I am putting together this AAPW show. He's like, would you want to be a part of it? And he's like, that'd be your big send off. I said, well, of course, absolutely. And you were at that show, right?
I was at that one, yes.
Um, does the look on my face whenever I came through the curtain make more sense now?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Um, because again, whoever listens to this, it'll be the first time they probably ever hear that too.
How are how are you doing nowadays?
Um, Sadly, it's not any better. Um, Whenever it first got diagnosed with it, um, they were able to go in and remove what was there. They said that with as much as was there, we got three options for you. One, we're going to remove it and it never comes back. Two, you're going to have to keep coming to us every 3 years and have more removed up to the point where we just have to remove your colon altogether. Or three, it kills you. I said, all right, cool. Well, that's, something to look forward to with this. And that was October, November of 2019. Then we're midway through 2020, and I start seeing symptoms of that I had the first time coming back again. So I immediately called up the doctor and I got, another appointment scheduled, and it had come back stronger the second time because technically I should not have seen them a second time for another year and a half. But it had come back, they thought, more progressive this second time. Lucky enough, it wasn't as progressive as they thought, but it had come back a second time in just a year and a half. But we caught it in time to hopefully kind of nip it in the butt before it got too worse, basically. Um, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like I'm still just a few months fresh off of that second go around of having that done. And lucky enough, it wasn't as bad as they initially thought because of just how quickly it come back, but it's still scary enough that it came back in a year and a half,
Right.
roughly. So there's big concerns there with that. But where they are concerned with it, coming back so aggressively, they did ask me, they're like, what have you been doing, you know, in your downtime? I'm like, well, all things considered, I'm like, I'm too scared to do anything. I'm scared that I'm going to somehow do something to, aggravate this, ruin all the progress that we've made to try and, get this removed, keep it gone, you know, et cetera, et cetera. They're like, well, they're like, we don't think that that's helping. Like you need to try and be a bit more active if possible to help keep your body fighting again. Like because the first go around your body I did a semi decent job of fighting this off and kept it for the most part kind of contained. They're like, yes, it was bad. Yes, it's could still possibly kill you. They're like, but staying active is what really helped you. So to answer your question on if I will ever do anything wrestling wise again, maybe. I don't know. I haven't been able to process any of that just yet. I'm not
Right,
sure if I, you know, want to,
right,
because I don't I don't mind where I left things. And I'm very much a leave the memories alone kind of person. Um, so I don't know. I like doing what I do backstage at CCW, and I like just kind of playing a small role in front of the camera with our second run of Pinnacle over there in Cape. I like playing my small role there, so I don't know. I still haven't quite come to terms on what I want being active again being. If it's just going to a gym to stay active, just, walking my dog to be active, or even wrestling again. I don't know. So that's unfortunately just kind of all I really know as far as if I ever will again. I don't know yet.
well, I'm very very sorry to hear all this, and I'm definitely going to be praying for you going forward.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And
um
our story kind of took a dark turn, but
yeah, I had no idea. I thought we were going to.
you're the first to hear it outside
Dang.
of just the few people in the locker room and close personal friends and family. You're the very first to hear that story.
Wow.
So
I mean, I don't want to say I'm honored to hear that, but
I know.
I appreciate you opening up like that for this podcast, and definitely everybody listening, please send your prayers and positive vibes to Billy. We need him around. We need him around. um,
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that because I know I might not have a lot to offer, but I do still have something.
everybody has something to offer, but thank you for
Exactly.
opening up. Thank you for sharing your story, and I wish you nothing but the best going forward after that. And you're gonna you've kicked a lot of ass, so I think you'll be just fine. But
I greatly appreciate
we'll
that.
we'll 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 we'll, we'll keep helping you out on our end.
Hey, I greatly appreciate it, sir. I really do because it was it was 100% fun while it lasted. If I am done, but for some reason I do make that decision that I still got something more left to give. I'll make sure you're one of the first to know.
Thank you for thank you for that. Definitely send your vibes to Billy, and after that, I don't feel like being a shill. So yeah, all I'm just gonna say is uh, keep Billy in your thoughts and prayers, and let's just let's see him beat this, and we'll see everybody next time.